Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media.
Today on Spotlight, from freight hauler to cherished tourist attraction to movie star, the many roles of the River Queen. Plus, I Cheerfully Refuse takes readers on an epic adventure that is being hailed as a sweet, apocalyptic novel. And then meet a St. Louis Art Fair photographer who takes pictures at night. But first, a very unusual performer who uses other people's bathtubs for her art. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
If you've had a hard day, one way to unburden yourself is to take a hot bath.
How's the people? Are the people all here?
But for Siobhan O'Loughlin, taking a hot bath is how she helps others wash their troubles away.
You think you're coming for the show, but then you're leaving with, hopefully, ideally, a different sense of community than maybe you had before.
Wait, show? Bathroom? Bathtub? Obviously, an explanation is in order. Siobhan O'Loughlin is a performance artist who has been appearing off and on for almost a decade in a play she wrote called Broken Bone Bathtub, performed while actually taking a bath, wearing nothing but bubbles and a colorful cast taped onto her left arm. She's been doing the show in bathtubs all over the world, including several in St. Louis.
All of my performances are designed to get people to talk, and in some cases to trick people into feeling so confident with me that they start to share things that they might not have otherwise felt comfortable enough to share.
Have you felt jealous of someone else in your life?
Sure.
It's the most beautiful communal experience I've ever known in the theater.
Just the too much thing just like happens.
I describe Broken Bone Bathtub as an immersive theatrical experience where the audience engages with the storyteller who's actually reliving the event.
That event happened in 2014. Siobhan was in Brooklyn riding her bike when she got into an accident that left her with a badly broken hand, a cast she had to keep dry, and a dilemma.
I lived in an apartment in Brooklyn where I only had a shower. I had the experience of people asking me how they can help and what they can do for me. After my first day of trying to wash my hair in the sink, I was like, yeah, you know what? If you have a bathtub, I would totally come over.
I can't take the pressure.
At a time when she was feeling especially vulnerable, those encounters made her feel less alone and more loved. A year later, she turned her experience into a kind of show within a show, charming and disarming obviously small audiences into coming clean about their own life experiences. Come for the show, stay for the therapy.
I love asking people about when the last time they cried was. I love that question.
Now, Siobhan has produced a new kind of show about her show within a show, and she's taking it on the road. It's a film documenting her final year touring Broken Bone Bathtub, being shown at festivals including the St. Louis Fringe Fest. Broken Bone Bathtub, the play, was first seen in St. Louis in 2016, playing the big room, meaning the big bathroom, at the Lemp Mansion.
Some of the critics said, this is the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. And I'm like, yes, it is.
I have like depression, anxiety, I have like panic attacks, like I have all of these.
She just starts telling the story and then she stops and goes, God, I felt really vulnerable in this moment, and looks right at someone in the audience and says, have you ever had a moment where you felt vulnerable? And they say, yes. And she's like, would you be willing to tell me about it? And then they open up, and the things that I heard and the time that we produced it here at the Lemp Mansion, I was gobsmacked.
Siobhan brought Broken Bone Bathtub back to St. Louis for a second time in 2019, performing at the LaSalle Park home of Jeff Story.
She handed me a pitcher and she asked if I would wash her hair. So I poured water over her head and I washed her hair as she sang. It wasn't quite analogous to the washing of the feet, but it was really an intimate moment. Yeah, it was a little weird, but I felt there was a connection in that moment.
after more than 600 performances, Siobhan rarely does it anymore.
I'm exhausted.
Instead, she hopes her documentary about Broken Bone Bathtub will offer audiences a new story to soak up.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for sitting.
I just believe so deeply in going out to see things and experiencing things with people that my main intention with this film is to reveal some of the behind the scenes of the independent artist world that we sometimes visit. But more than that, it is to celebrate and honor and encourage everyone to continue to step out and to seek out these kinds of events, because in my opinion, they are very much not just worthwhile, but necessary for, I'm gonna cry. They are necessary for the human spirit.
You can see Broken Bone Bathtub, the documentary, at STL Fringe Fest on August 13th and 17th. For more information, go to stlfringe.org.
With every stroke of the bow, every stroke of the brush, with every stroke of genius, the arts make life in St. Louis richer, not just emotionally, but also economically. In our region, the arts create $869 million a year in economic activity, supporting 12,000 jobs, generating $155 million for state and local governments, with more than 8 million annual arts-related visits. That's more than all St. Louis sporting events combined. Whether in a park, on a street, or a wall, experimental or a classic, the arts deserve our support, because the arts help support us. HEC Media is proud to be our region's home for arts, education, and culture. Because in St. Louis, the arts mean business.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. A boat by many names, including the River Queen, served many roles, transforming from a freight hauler to a cherished tourist attraction, and even gracing the silver screen in renowned films. Public historian Adam Clappy tells the story and reveals how it found its demise in St. Louis.
When the steamboat River Queen arrived in St. Louis in June of 1964, her owners, John Groffel and Arthur Credo, had big dreams. Ever since they had first purchased the stern-wheel steamer at auction in 1961, they had hoped that the boat would bring them big dollars as a nostalgic tourist attraction. But in just 3 short years, those dreams would end up at the bottom of the river. But before we get to the sinking, a little history. The Howard Shipyards and Dock Company of Jeffersonville, Indiana, built the River Queen in 1923. But when she was constructed, she had a different name, the Cape Girardeau, and she operated mostly carrying passengers and freight on the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. Then, in 1935, she was sold and got a different name, the Gordon C. Green. As the Gordon C. Green, she operated as a tourist boat, mainly on the Ohio River, though she also operated some on the Mississippi, particularly during annual trips to Mardi Gras in New Orleans. She became a movie star as well, appearing in 3 films, most notably 1939's Gone with the Wind. But just because the Gordon C. Green was a movie star didn't mean her career was going well. By 1951, she was out of service, and in 1952 she was sold again. Over the next decade or so, she'd undergo several name changes as different owners attempted to make the ship into a popular tourist attraction, restaurant, or nightclub in places like Owensboro, Kentucky, and Bradenton, Florida. Finally, in 1961, now going by the name River Queen, the steamer was sold to John Groffel and Arthur Credo, who had plans to fix her up and turn her into a nostalgia-themed restaurant, museum, and gift shop. At first, they moored the River Queen in Hannibal, hoping to draw tourist crowds. They found early success, but they also knew an even bigger tourist market was just 100 miles downriver. So, in June of 1964, they had the River Queen towed to St. Louis. They moored her near the Eads Bridge, and advertisements called out to tourists by promising that the River Queen would give them a nostalgic taste of 19th century steamboat life. Tourists could get lunch or dinner in her 185-seat dining room, and her kitchen offered everything from shrimp to catfish to steak. For the next few years, everything seemed to be going well. The River Queen was bringing in money, and the restaurant was well regarded. but disaster struck in the early morning hours of December 2nd, 1967. That morning, the restaurant manager noticed the boat listing in the water. Luckily, no one else was on board. Groffel and Credo arrived shortly thereafter and could only watch as the waters rose over the second deck. The River Queen was sunk. To this day, no one knows why. The ship was scrapped, but parts of her steel hull can still be seen on the riverfront when the water is low. Instead of nostalgia for the past, her rusted hull offers us a reminder of how dangerous and powerful the river remains.
Next week on History Spotlight, the border dispute known as the Honey War.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org. You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
In a tiny town on the north shore of Lake Superior, a husband and wife offer a room to a frightened stranger, even though they know that what he's running from could very well destroy them all.
It probably is madness in the world they inhabit, but they can't help themselves. It's what they're made of. They almost have to say, "Would you like a room?"
The heartbreak and salvation that follow form the story of Leif Enger's new novel, I Cheerfully Refuse, an epic adventure that the Minnesota writer began during the pandemic, when the chaos and confusion that engulfed America didn't seem all that far off from the ravaged future depicted in the novel.
And sometimes you just, day to day, write what you need. I definitely needed to put my faith in a future that wasn't going to be ruined.
For Enger, I Cheerfully Refuse is an answer to the struggles we face in a world that can't be tamed or explained. It's also the continuation of a writing journey that began more than 20 years and 4 novels ago, when Enger published his best-selling debut novel, Peace Like a River, which became an instant and enduring classic.
Sometimes I'll hit a point in the story where I think, I hope people will go with me here. I hope that this will not throw people off the track. But in the end, it is you in the story, and you have to go where it's leading you.
So tell us about, I don't want to say the basic plot, because this is a far from basic plot.
Sure. This is a story about a man and his wife living happily in a in a dysfunctional future. He is a bass player and house painter. She is kind of a renegade bookseller. This is an age when booksellers routinely get bomb threats. Reading has fallen out of favor. Text itself, literacy is unpopular. And so, like Orpheus, he takes his instrument, in his case, an electric bass, gets on a small boat and goes to sea in search of his lost, beloved wife. That's the core of the book.
So this is your 4th.
Yeah.
I often wonder, with each novel, do you feel like you're advancing or digging deeper into a question that you're trying to answer?
I think the answer is yes. The way that I work, writing is, I'm very lucky in that I've been able to make a living at it. But I think I would do it in any case because I've found that it's the best way for me to try to come to terms with big questions that I have in my life, questions that we all have. In my first novel, I was trying to unravel what it meant that my very young son had life-threatening asthma, and I just didn't know how to cope with it. I was praying for some sort of answer to that and just not getting one. And I wrote a book in which there's a boy with terrible asthma, and I came to understand it better just by asking the questions. I don't have answers to any of these things, but it is helpful to ask the questions, and that's what writing novels allows me to do. So this one is the same in that way. I am perplexed at a lot of the things that are going on in the world. I'm confused by them and upset by them. And so maybe by looking at what looks like possibly kind of a troublesome future, a dangerous one. I have kids and grandchildren. I want their future to be good. I wanted to write a book about the future in which we could see some glimpses of hope. But I didn't know where those glimpses were going to come from until I wrote the book.
To find out the best advice he got from his brother that's really helped him in his writing, watch the full interview at hecmedia.org.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Mark your calendars for the 2024 St. Louis Art Fair, September 6th through the 8th. Get to know the artists and their art before heading out to the fair with HEC Media's Meet the Artists series at youtube.com/meettheartists.
Hi, I'm Xavier Nuez. I'm a photographer. For 30 years, I've been bringing lights on my night shoots to create a fantasy world using my lighting. I think what makes my work unique is that you're looking at actual locations. They're not paintings, they're not Photoshop effects. So you're looking at actual locations or objects, but there's something very surreal about them, and that's my lighting. People don't realize the power of light and color, and when I show them an image in the daylight and then what I did to it using my lights at night, very often they're just blown away. They can't believe it's the same location. Because one looks very ordinary, can look scary, ugly, and the other is very dreamy, it's very magical. So the way that I create these images, the camera's on a tripod, I'm doing long exposures. They can range from 3-4 minutes up to an hour, 90 minutes. And during that long exposure, I'll walk around, very often in front of the camera, wearing black from head to toe so that it's hard for the camera to see me. So with the darkness and the long exposure and the way that I'm not really reflecting light, I can walk around invisible and be in the scene, lighting the scene. I look at the scene as though it's a theater set, and so I light it in a very theatrical way. Also, I love the idea that they're empty stages, there's nobody in them, and so it's up to the viewer to fill that void and to step into the image. The images I create are basically places that I would love to be, places I'd love to live. You know, we live in a crazy world in a crazy time, and I create images that I want to crawl into and just live there. And that's kind of what I want people to do. I want them to want to be there. I'll be at the St. Louis Art Fair. Drop by my booth, say hello, ask me any question you want. I'm always happy to discuss my work. Looking forward to seeing you, looking forward to the show.
Later on Spotlight, a traditional jazz, swing, and ragtime musical performance.
I'm very excited about our capability in fighting misuse of generative AI capabilities.
Ning Zhang is responding to a growing threat, unauthorized realistic speech synthesis.
In the New Hampshire primary, President Biden's voice was deepfake.
Deepfake robocalls discouraging people from voting. Zhang is an associate professor of computer science and engineering in the McKelvey School of Engineering at Washington University in St. Louis. Zhang says speech synthesis technology can truly improve lives in many ways. But now that artificial intelligence is supercharging this technology, the emergence of deepfakes is the problem.
The broad definition of deepfake is something that's created digitally or a lie that just by looking at the digital representation, it's very difficult to tell whether this happened in the real world or not. There are several cases. A couple in Canada received a call having the voice exactly sounds like their loved ones and say, hey, I need money because I just got in a car accident. Telephone scams are one of the probably most profitable cybercrimes that you can commit.
A deepfake is when the synthesized speech is misused to deceive.
It only takes one clip. Clip being 10 seconds is fairly sufficient. Tone, your accent, the way you speak. And this is what that misuse of AI sounds like. This is no longer Ning Zhang talking. This is the sound of an imposter generated from AI, a deepfake that sounds like him So the real Zhang developed AntiFake, a tool to protect voice recordings from unauthorized speech synthesis like what you're hearing. Now back to the real Zhang for more. We are embedding this adversarial scrambling or this adversarial perturbation into the signal. It will mess up the AI engine. The outcome synthesized audio will sound completely different instead of sounding like me.
Like this.
I have arrived at your house. Please open the door. I have arrived at your house. Please open the door.
Zhang says AntiFake would make it impossible for scammers to generate a voice that sounds recognizable.
We're hoping eventually the technology develops, it would be fully embedded so that when you make a phone call, you don't even know it's happening, right? It automatically protects your voice.
The AntiFake protected voice, once taken and copied for AI to generate words, would then sound very different and not at all believable.
New clip should sound very, very similar to your original voice, to a human. It would sound quite different to the AI model that the attacker is using.
For example, the example here I show is the cancer is caused by vaccination, which is absolutely a misinformation that could cause harm. And the attacker will just click on generate.
Cancer is caused by vaccination.
To mitigate this threat, we add minor noises, or when the attacker used this protected sample for unauthorized speech synthesis, the synthesized audio will sound like this.
Cancer is caused by vaccination.
Which does not sound like me.
The researchers say with this new protection, AI tools can't read necessary characteristics from voice recordings.
To make it harder for this phone scam to happen. I know many seniors who lost their life saving because of these phone scams.
The research shows AntiFake has a protection rate of over 95%.
Computer scientists like us need to focus on there's no misuse of the technology, there's no misuse of the data, right? I mean, that's what makes the research fun.
For more St. Louis stories, subscribe to the HEC YouTube channel. Connect STL from HEC Media.
Welcome to Wildcare Park. St. Louis Wildcare Park is our 425-acre campus here in unincorporated Spanish Lake. We are opening in 2027, so a little ways away, but that gives us plenty of time to finish up our planning and do construction and get the animals used to being on the property.
This will be an entirely different experience than what you have been used to at the St. Louis Zoo. It's going to be a larger area. It's going to be multi-species mixed together, hopefully living in harmony. So it'll be a little bit of a different experience every time you come. The animals will have free range, free roam of about 100 acres in one pasture and about 60 acres in the other pasture. So you don't know where you might find them. You're likely to see different animals every time you visit Wildcare Park. There's a variety of species that we've been looking at. The very first sort of filter that we put our collection plan through was looking at what species would do best in St. Louis's climate and with the native wildlife that's already living on this property.
We are going to have grubby zebra and some addax, Somali wild ass. We will have multiple pastures where we will breed endangered ungulates or animals with hooves. And we're going to give them private space where we can build up those numbers, and many of those species have current or future recovery programs. So ideally, some of the animals that are born here go back to their rangeland to help our conservation efforts. And then the other half, which is going to be our public part of the experience, the main draw will be 2 large safari pastures where we're going to put people on vehicles and ride them through those 2 pastures. We have a savanna pasture where the star of that pasture will be giraffe. And then we have a woodland safari, which the star of that pasture will be white rhinos. It'll be really cool to be on a vehicle probably around the size of a bus. We will ride on that path. It'll be about 20 minutes, and we'll get to talk about the animals and what they're doing in real time. This is scale and scope, where the animals are in the large pasture and you're among them. Whereas at the zoo, the animals are, they're in their exhibit and you're kind of outside of it. So it's a really wonderful complementary set of guest experiences, all designed to, of course, bring our guests closer to animals and build that connection with nature.
It's estimated that the St. Louis Zoo Wildcare Park will generate over $660 million in economic activity across the St. Louis region in the next 10 years, according to a recent economic impact report. The park is expected to open in 2027.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Next week, a sculpture created with a 3D printer. Wait until you find out what this is made out of. Plus, the story of the Honey War, a border dispute between Missouri and Iowa. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.